Bitcoin's going to crash. And so Bitcoin can go from 40,000 to 10,000 to 5,000. I mean, in a few hours even. Well, money is supposed to be the most liquid and the most marketable commodity. That's what money is by definition. I mean, before we had money, we conducted commerce through barter. So, you traded goods and services, with other people, but you had to pay for the services and goods you bought with the goods and services that you had or that you produced. So if I was a butcher and you were a baker, I wanted some of your bread, I would trade you some of my meat. Well, what if you're a vegetarian and you don't want my meat? Well, I can't get your bread because all I have is meat that you don't want, right? And so it wasn't very efficient. And then, of course, how much meat do I need to give you for a loaf of bread? Or how many loaves of bread do you need to give me for a steak? I mean, what's the relative value? It's hard to say. It was very cumbersome. I mean, it worked because that's how people lived until man invented money. And so what money was a commodity that everybody could agree on, that it was universally accepted in exchange for other goods and services. But ultimately, metal ended up being the best money, and they made metal into coins. And the best metal for money was gold. And so, over time, we learned that gold was the best form of money, and gold functioned as money very efficiently for thousands of years, But eventually, man developed money substitutes, currency, which could circulate, alongside of money, and be a medium of exchange and a unit of account. But the reason that those money substitutes worked is that they were backed by actual money. So paper money, currency, was backed by actual money. So if you had, $100, it was really an IOU for $100 worth of gold that sat in the vault somewhere. And what gave that piece of paper value was the gold that was in that vault backing it up, right? So, and it would function. But, 1971, ever since then, we finally cut the last ties that remained to real money and paper, Federal Reserve notes. We now have this fiat monetary system that I think is doomed to fail because it can't work, because what we're using as money is not real money. The type of monetary system that existed before 1971, and maybe even before 1913, which is when we introduced the Federal Reserve. I mean, I don't think governments or countries need central banks. I think on balance, they do more harm than good. So I don't think we need them. But I also don't think governments should try to play the role of central bankers either. I think that money needs to be a creature of the free market, right? Money needs to be produced by, the market, not by the government. And if the government wants money, it needs to tax it and collect it through taxation, right? Legitimately. And that's what we did when we were on gold standards and the money was created privately. The government would buy the gold and turn it into coins and make it into legal tender. That was fine, but it was the free market that decided what money was, and that created money and brought it into existence. The government just coined it and established a unit of account and the weights and measures of the money. How much gold was $1, how much silver equaled $1, and that's what they did. But the gold and silver was created by the free market, by miners who went out and produced the gold. And then if the government wanted gold, it had to levy taxes and collect it from the population. They couldn't just print it into existence the way they do now, so they couldn't run these big deficits. I mean, they could borrow money, but there's certainly a limit to what they could borrow. But there's no limit to what they can print. Although the problem is, if you exceed the limits, you destroy the value of what you're printing, which is where we're headed. But I think we can go back to an honest monetary system. I think it would work great. I mean, it worked great in the past. I think it can work even greater in the future if you marry it to modern technology and use the internet and use blockchain to make it even easier to transact in gold now than it was in the past. I think it'll work extremely well having real money. 2022 has been a disastrous year already for a lot of these high-flying companies. No earnings or small earnings relative to their prices. So maybe the day of reckoning is close at hand. I mean, Bitcoin's price is about the same as it was a year ago. In fact, relatively soon, probably within the next few days, it will be negative on a year-over-year basis. And you need to ask, why is that? Because in 2021, there really was a record amount of hype surrounding Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I mean, like I've never seen. And not just hype, but massive advertising campaign from all sorts of crypto-related companies that got started up in the IPO SPAC wave of 2021. So, I mean, Bitcoin was really shoved down everybody's throat in 2021. I mean, especially look at a network like CNBC, nonstop crypto ads. I mean, one ad after another, nonstop throughout the day. And then their list of guests, including all these pumpers from the Bitcoin world and various companies out there touting Bitcoin with pie in the sky forecasts of spectacular price appreciation, and all of the on-air, hosts and they're all agreeing. I mean, nobody is really challenging any of these people, despite how ridiculous their forecasts are, what they're saying, and despite all this positive press, right, and massive money spent to convince people to buy basically nothing, worthless tokens. Why didn't the price go up? Because lots of people were buying, right? And you had these institutions, right, come in and start buying Bitcoin. Why didn't all that buying drive up the price? That's because there was somebody else selling. And as long as people think they can get rich buying Bitcoin, they'll buy Bitcoin. But when they no longer believe they're going to get rich, they won't buy it. And when they think they're going to get poor, if they keep hodling it, then they're going to sell it. And this is billionaires in Bitcoin. The Bitcoin billionaires bought their Bitcoin a long time ago, right? If you're a billionaire buying Bitcoin today, you're not going to be a billionaire if you buy a lot of Bitcoin. But people became billionaires getting in early, and now they're cashing out. But the people who are buying now are the bag holders. Bitcoin is going to crash. And so Bitcoin can go from 40,000 to 10,000 to 5,000. I mean, in a few hours even. The big push was to get the institutions on board. And they may have succeeded to a small degree in 2021, suckering in some institutional money. But I think that after being burned so badly, I think the institutions that put their foot in the water and now see how cold it is, I think they're not going into the pool.